Hello everyone, this is JPL back for another podcast, and today I am joined with on the call.
Hey, I'm Toa Legend.
Okay, and beside us we have our...
Matthew?
And Kat.
Yes, our returning peoples. Okay, so our discussion for today is our top 5 anime shows / movies. And who wants to start with this? And before we actually start, I should probably tell you how this thing is formed. So, we go with number 5. Everyone tells them what their number 5 is. We have a small discussion. Then we go number 4, 3. If you don't know how to count after 3, it's usually 4. But then, we're going down, so we're going to number 2. And then following 2 is number 1. And so on. So...
Thank you for the brief math lesson there, too.
Who wants to start?
Okay, I guess we're going with ladies first. So my number 5 is Death Note. And it's a series about a boy in high school named Light who finds a notebook on the ground. And whenever you write someone's name in it, they die. And it follows the story as he tries to rid the world of criminals and then as the police try to stop him. And I need to say why I liked it too. And I like the story because it's a psychological thriller and I think it's just written pretty well. So, it's always high tension and you don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
I just didn't like the second half.
Yeah, and it's really that second half that determines if you'll like the show as a whole or not, because I was enjoying the show until the second half, and that's when I really started to dislike the show, and ever since I've not been able to shake that.
So, a lot of people, when they talk about anime, they say that if you were to be introduced into anime, you should probably start with Death Note, because it is probably the more, let's say, grounded or modernized anime where it takes place in our world and it doesn't have all the funky craziness and
it's one of the less weird
absurd
anime out there.
humor that they have over there. And I would definitely agree. I would say, yeah, this is probably a good start for an anime. I know it was for me.
So, my biggest thing with Death Note is I watched through only about the first 3 episodes, just to give a feel for it. I myself personally found it just too dark for me to get into. Not that it was poorly written or poorly animated or anything of the sort. Just as a personal preference, I just felt like it was too dark. But it really depends on who you are trying to get into anime. If this is their first episode, if it's someone that you're trying to get into anime because anime tends to be a superior storytelling device rather than a lot of Western cartoons, then yeah, I think Death Note's a pretty good one. If you're just trying to get people into anime because it's fun, might be a hard...
more lighthearted.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's kind of hard for my list because I don't really have anything lighthearted.
I have one thing that's kind of lighthearted.
If it is lighthearted, it does eventually get dark at points. So
yeah,
that's the issue. Who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Okay.
So for my number 5, I chose Persona 4, the animation. And I haven't actually played any of the Persona games, but I really want to. And mostly because of this anime. And the interesting thing, it's a very strange show. And sort of the premise is that there are murders going on in this small town, so a group of students decides they're going to figure this out. And they jump into an alternate dimension through the TV where they have to sort of confront their alternate selves, their personas, what they hide from the world. And But the interesting part for me is that it's less about the story and more about the characters. So there are like, I think it's maybe 8 episodes where they just take a break from the normal story and they explore each of the characters in depth and how they interact and all of that. And so for quite a few people that will be very strange being pulled out of the show's momentum. But for me, I really enjoyed like taking a break and exploring these characters, finding out who they are, and then continuing the main action.
So, to any of my bronies out there, there's only one thing I've seen, like, involving Persona 4, involving an animation, and if you've been around for a while, then you probably know what that animation is.
That's it.
Are we supposed to respond?
Nope. It's just a general message to any viewers, if any.
Okay, going back to Persona 4, what Matt was saying about the characters, I think that's one of the good points of anime, like focusing on the characters and having different, diverse characters that you really get to explore through the story.
Yeah. I haven't actually watched any Persona 4. I've only just barely heard of it, I'll be honest. But, yeah, I agree with focusing on the characters. I think most stories should focus more on the characters, in general. I think that's something that's lacking in a lot of stories right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Toa.
Alright, so my 5th favorite anime on my list is Fairy Tail. Fairy Tail is a story about that takes place in a world where magic exists, and it gives the story mostly from the perspective of someone who just recently joined a guild, and the guild is called Fairy Tail. And in this guild, they go on different quests and get paid for doing said quests, where basically they just deal with different things with magic. And as it goes, the story gets deeper and deeper, and generally the quests start to have a more moral issue, like, hey, somebody's trying to destroy the earth, maybe we should stop them. Overall, I really enjoyed it because it's one anime that really gets like the idea of family, I think, in that the guild functions as a pretty good family where people in the guild, there are a lot of conflicts, but at the end of the day, they wouldn't let anybody outside of the guild hurt anybody in the guild. And it always felt good to watch the protagonists, any of the protagonists really, come back in a fight. Just always fills your heart with joy. A couple downsides are that it's, really long, and I believe ongoing even still. I'm not sure if it's ended yet. But from what I've seen of it, it has been very good. Yeah.
All right.
That's one of those shows that I've heard a lot about and I might enjoy, but it's just way too long for me to get into.
Yeah.
I got into it and then dropped it because I'm kind of like Bleach, where I just got bored of the fights and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's mostly a fighting show, and...
True.
Well, the only thing I really know about the show is the music that you put in some of your videos.
Yeah.
The music is amazing.
Yeah, the soundtracks are really, really well done. So there's kind of a split with the soundtracks. The first, 175 episodes are using one soundtrack, and then when they brought back Fairy Tail in 2014, I want to say, they redid a lot of the soundtracks. So I prefer the earlier soundtracks, but the newer ones are starting to grow on me too.
Okay. All right. So, for my number 5, it is Hellsing Ultimate. Now, I have to give a disclaimer to all you people. This show is not for the lighthearted. It is the darkest thing I've ever seen for so far. It is tremendously dark. If I would advise it to hardcore fans, but to light-hearted fans, no, definitely not. Anyway, so Hellsing Ultimate. It is a story about a vampire named Alucard, who's part of an organization that hunts down other vampires. That is the basic synopsis. It is a short series, about 11 episodes long. It's a, well developed story for each episode, knowing more about each character, knowing more about different philosophy, other characters, and it has some sort of interestingness to it. It's pretty fun. I enjoy some of the ideals that the vampires have. I know, yeah. It's really complicated to explain a lot of the things there. I do know that there's a bit of a hilarity to having, what is it, the Protestants? No, the Catholics?
Yeah.
Catholics or Protestants? Which one?
Both.
But which one is he part of? Like, it's funny how that, there's one religious group, disses the other one. It's like, wow, you know nothing. And they're vampire hunters, which is kind of weird. But it's really fun. And like I said, oh my gosh, it's extremely dark.
That's one. I've seen a few of the episodes, but they were really long, so I had a hard time getting through it. But then I discovered the abridged series.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too.
Hilarious, and yeah.
And even the abridged series, as dark as some of the stuff there is, they have to take out a lot of really gruesome stuff there, so just so you know that what you see in the abridged series is just a glimpse of how dark things got.
Right. This is one of the anime that I've heard about just in like its name, but I've heard more about it from the abridged series.
Yeah.
Still haven't seen either, but have heard a lot about it.
Yeah, it's one of the best abridged series out there, but it takes them about a year for each episode.
Right.
I mean, the anime itself, it is long. While it is just 10 episodes, each episodes take up to 40 minutes to an hour to get their episode done.
Wow.
Which, in the end, adds up to just a regular season of a normal several episode show. Or 20 minutes. And one thing I really like is just how it has a bit of a mature storytelling. Because a lot of the things in other shows they do is that they like to take out a lot of the dark elements of the world and just make everything like a happy, joyful paradise. But this, it shows you how the world actually isn't a nice place. It's very dark. There's people who are evil. And, there's a lot of Nazism in it. Which, yeah. Nazi vampires. There you go. That's all I'm going to say, if you haven't seen it.
That's actually my main complaint about the show is the show itself. The abridged show actually fixes this, but you have Nazi vampires, and it doesn't get quite as over the top as you would hope it would in a lot of the scenes. So that's what the abridged fixes it.
The abridged is hilarious, to be honest. Yeah. Okay. So, number 4.
4. For me, it's Assassination Classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a show about a class, how surprising, and they're trying to assassinate their teacher, who is this weird octopus creature thingy.
As you do, yeah.
This is one of the weirder animes out there. It's one of the weirder. It's not the weirdest.
Okay.
But, I just really like the characters mostly in there, and how throughout the whole 2 series, you actually get to know all the people who are in the class, at least to a certain level, where usually, like in other shows, it would focus on the main character and then the other classmates are just classmates or whatever.
Yeah. I did really enjoy watching this show. It's one of the shows that has a lot of, for the most part, it's very lighthearted, and then, you know, it gets to a section where it gets kind of dark. And it's one of those examples that I was talking about earlier, about the whole anime has a lot of dark moments, which here it has a lot of light and some darkness to it, which it's actually a great contrast for something like this.
Okay, so are we
Nothing
done
else
with
to
that?
say?
I haven't seen Assassination Classroom, so I don't.
Neither
have
have I.
bad.
Yeah.
My number 4 is Death Parade, which is a 2015 show, and it is one of the only shows that I've actually watched as it was showing up on websites, and it's a really interesting show. Spoilers for the first episode, but it sort of deals with these people, and they've died, and now they have to compete to see who goes to reincarnation and who goes to the void, where their soul just stays there forever. And it's kind of examining how these competitions sort of bring out the worst in people, and then questioning if that is a moral thing to do, if you're really seeing the worst in people, or if there are other things going on. And it is, for the most part, very, very depressing and very, very tragic. But the interesting thing is that as it sort of goes on, it becomes less about death and more about life, in that it's celebrating life from the perspective of people who have died. And so it was really interesting, just sort of that it starts out, life is terrible, everyone dies, everything is sad, but then it transitions to what is good about life and why life is important.
Yeah, this, I watched this, I think you were the one that recommended it to me, but I watched this about the same time as you, and I really enjoyed it. It has a lot of philosophical questions that it brings up, like morality is a big one, the temporariness of life, and it also brings up, okay, so what happens after death, and it also brings up, it brings into the picture, like, who is God? Is there a God, really? It's one that really makes you think, and it has a really good ending to it, and it being only, like, 12 episodes?
Yeah.
It's something that's bite-sized, really, that you can take in and just enjoy.
Yeah, and I mean, the animation is spectacular. It's
The art is amazing, too.
It's really colorful, but it's very muted and sad colorful, so it doesn't detract from the sort of tone of the show.
Yeah, and like the whole art style is kind of themed around like a casino type of feel, which is a really interesting take.
And that's actually a perfect one. If you watch the first episode and you enjoy the first episode, then you will almost certainly enjoy the show. If you hate the first episode, then you will hate the show.
Yeah, I completely agree.
The only thing I know about Death Parade is that there's just a certain cameo from a character from another anime.
Oh yes,
Shh.
No, it isn't.
It's not really
It's not a spoiler.
I mean,
Well,
for
it
people who
might be
haven't
actually.
seen it.
Oh,
I think it is, yeah.
okay. Yeah, I mean, it may or may not be a cameo. I don't know if that's been confirmed. But it definitely looks like a character from a different anime. It's like a blink and you'll miss it. But
Interesting.
But didn't they name him?
I don't think so.
Because you showed me the clip.
Yeah, I don't remember. So yeah, check it out. If you enjoy the first episode, then keep watching, because it's definitely... It is one of those shows, though, that you do have to be a little bit careful about, because it is very depressing. So if you don't... You need to make sure you have a lighthearted show back up in case it gets too extreme for you.
All right, so I guess on to my fourth.
Yeah.
For this one, it's actually one that I watched pretty recently. It's Aldnoah.0. And it's one that I had
that one.
recommended to me. I think at the time it was on Netflix. I don't know if it still is, but it's a really interesting anime. It takes place a little bit into the future, where basically aliens, which are
Not aliens.
not really aliens, that basically the Martians that are also humans attacked the Earth humans, which the Earth humans aren't really different from us. They're just a couple of years down the road. And so there's a lot of tension in that, and then something happens where after like 15 years of peace, they finally go back to fighting. And it's just really well done it has a nice political aspect to it, but also you can see really good character growth as time goes on, from the main character becoming more human, I would say, as the story goes on, and certain characters that mirror that or do the opposite even. And it gives a sense of trying to figure out who you can actually trust in all of it too, which is a very interesting aspect. And the whole story revolves around some good fight scenes with characters in giant mech suits, which is just a very nice way to progress the story. Just in the action, I never got bored from it. So just an overall really well done anime.
Yeah. That one, I watched it a while ago. Haven't rewatched it, so I can't really remember the story very much, but I do remember liking it. And especially like the openings and endings,
Yeah.
like it had a really amazing music.
Yeah, that's true too.
And the animation was pretty cool too.
Okay.
Nice sci-fi.
Yeah, for sure.
Is it my turn?
Yep.
Okay. So, my number 4 is a Full Metal Alchemist. Now, don't get this mixed up with Brotherhood. This is the first release, not the second one. And, yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Because the second one is kind of... like the first few episodes, it is just an abbreviation of the first series, where they abbreviate episodes that took almost the entire series within like the first 10 episodes. And then they get into their own original content. Which, yeah, it's fun. But I personally preferred the first one. I liked how the story progressed. I liked that it took time to actually build, and there's just a lot of sad moments in this anime that are really memorable, even to people who haven't seen the series. And there's just also like a lot of ideals about how humans just fit in the world, like what makes up a soul, and like what are we like in the overall scheme of things, and just ideals like that are interesting to see, and like how things are progressed, and the character and the two main characters, seeing their interactions like with other characters and with other people, as it's really fun seeing how they achieve these things. Now there are a lot of light-hearted episodes, and some of them feels kind of filler, and they don't really seem to have a
purpose.
Yeah, a role or purpose within the overall scheme, but that doesn't really happen that often. But when they do, it's really noticeable, which is basically their journey to wherever they're heading, and overall how the series ended, which I'm gonna say this now, I've never been satisfied with an ending of anime. I had never liked how they end. They always end the way you don't want them to end, which is really sad, because I feel like other shows, they don't end at all. They just leave it off like, oh, there's more adventures, but we're not going to tell you. But here's like they have a definite end to their stories, which, yeah.
I think they made a movie for this, though, that kind of continued. Or was that for Brotherhood?
Well, no, yeah, they made a movie that was more official ending, which made it even worse than the ending of the show.
So for me, I had never seen either the Full Metal Alchemist, but once I finished watching through all the episodes of Fairy Tail that were out at the time, I'd asked someone to tell me what anime I should watch next, and they suggested Full Metal Alchemist, but they specified to watch Brotherhood because it was overall preferable to them. So I have seen Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and I really enjoyed it. The main difference between the two, for those that are wondering, is basically the first Full Metal Alchemist was released around the same time as the manga was being released, but basically they produced the show faster than the manga, and so they ran out of content that they could follow, so they took their own path and deviated from the manga quite a bit. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood was made later, and it directly parallels most of the manga, from what I understand.
So, about Full Metal Alchemist, one reason why I preferred the first one more than the second one is because the second one, for both of them, the character of Wrath. In the first one and the second one, they're two different people. They're not the same person in each of them. And I honestly preferred the first one. I liked his design. I liked how he was, and he was just he's one of those characters that you can watch in any series and you say, yep, that's my favorite character, and he's not even one of the main characters. He's he's kind of like a side villain. He's in a few episodes, but yeah, he's one of those characters where he's like, oh, I love watching him on screen no matter when he's on. So yeah.
Yeah. With Full Metal Alchemist, that's my third choice, so I guess I'll do a kind of transition here.
Yep.
And I really enjoyed the characters in the story, because with some anime and stuff, it's more like it seems like the author is making up the story as it's going along. But in Full Metal Alchemist, there's at least hints of like what's going to happen later on and stuff like that. Like you can see it coming in, like, even the first episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. True.
Okay. Matthew.
Well, first, my thoughts on Full Metal Alchemist. I actually was incredibly underwhelmed by it when I tried to watch it, so I've never gotten into it. But my number...
Just to ask a clarifying question, did you watch Full Metal Alchemist or Brotherhood?
Full Metal Alchemist, no, not
Okay.
Brotherhood. Yeah.
Okay. Just a matter of curiosity.
I watched a few episodes and it failed to catch my attention. I think it might have been a little overhyped for me. But my number 3 choice is Ghost in the Shell, and I guess I'll just have this include the movie and TV show and all of that in general, but mainly the first movie. And this is one of the very transformative animes. It's probably one, maybe even the most influential outside of Japan, just in general, especially in Hollywood. You'll see like The Matrix is very inspired by it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's just something very special about it. It has this like really philosophical, and it takes you a few times of watching it to really get it. And yeah, I mean, there's nothing quite like it out there. It's really cool, and the animation, despite being made like more than 20 years ago, it still holds up pretty well. Yeah, and then quick comment about the recent movie, which was kind of sort of based on the original movie.
It had the same name.
Yeah. I actually enjoyed it because I wasn't really expecting a philosophical movie. And what the original Ghost in the Shell is, it looks into the philosophical aspects of what it means to be human, and can a robot be human, and is there a meeting point? Whereas the live-action movie takes it more from an emotional perspective of what is the character feeling. And it was an interesting perspective. I won't pretend that it's a perfect movie, but I mean, I enjoyed it, even though a lot of fans of the original did not. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely one that I've been hearing about for forever, because it's something that comes up, like, if you search, like, what anime should I watch, Ghost in the Shell will pretty much always be on the list. It's something that's mostly just intimidated me too much to watch, because I know I'm in for something deep and philosophical. So I haven't seen through it. I've seen a couple reviews on it, but otherwise, I'm pretty new to it.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so on to my third. I have listed a pretty recent one, One Punch Man.
Oh.
So this one is pretty popular for its really subversiveness towards the superhero genre. And I think if you're looking for a lighthearted anime that you can laugh at, this is the way to go. The story, and this will spoil the first episode, but basically there's this one guy who's basically depressed, and then he runs into a supervillain, and eventually decides, hey, you know what, I've seen superheroes before, I'm going to try it. So he takes down this supervillain, then decides to train to be a superhero just for fun. And he ends up training so much that he gets to the point where he can kill any enemy with one punch, hence the name One Punch Man. And it's interesting to see his struggle with his basically overpoweredness, and just how he confronts everybody. It leaves him bored with most of everything that happens, but it's an interesting perspective on the whole idea. And it also, like, it makes fun of a lot of anime too, just in how the hero is portrayed. It's just a very interesting and funny story that, even though it's kind of becoming more of a anime that's just out of trend for people watching it, I don't think it's a bad anime.
Yeah. I read the manga. I haven't seen the anime, but it was really interesting how it keeps you it keeps your interest even though you know he's going to beat every enemy he ever faces.
Yeah.
Like you still want to continue
Yeah.
with the story and getting to know him.
Yeah, for sure. It's a very weird way to do it, but it does it well, I think.
So for me, I haven't seen it, but I know that a bunch of people that I watch and enjoy, they rave about One Punch Man. They say it's like, oh, it's the best anime out there, and for me, I've just never been into when a bunch of people say oh, this is the best thing ever. I don't really get into that because when I actually finally watch it, it's usually just oh, this was pointless. What was this is boring. So stuff like that. It's just it doesn't really seem like something that would interest me because being able to defeat someone in one punch is okay. Why is that fun? And I guess you have to watch it to see how this works out, but and also another reason why I didn't watch it is because I'm not really a person who likes to watch anime. I've seen a few because they were suggested to me by friends and other people, and yeah, I watched it because of that, but now I'm kind of stopping my whole anime craze because overall it's not, I feel like it's not really healthy because a lot of the animes I've seen are very depressing and stuff like that is not good for my mindset. Every time I finish an anime I mope around I'm done with this. What do I do with my life next? Which I don't think is really healthy to do, so I'm kind of staying away from that, and I don't really want to have experiences like that.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think, yeah, I don't know. One comment I did want to add about One Punch Man, it's basically, so I believe it's 12 episodes long. But I watched the whole season in one day because of how enticed I was. And it starts off a little bit slow, but it speeds up pretty quickly. But basically, what I would compare it to is if you've ever seen any abridged version of an anime, that's what this is, but it's the official anime. That's how I would relate the humor to anybody.
Okay. Anyone else want to say anything?
I don't have anything to add now.
Okay. Alright, so for my number 3 is Assassination Classroom. This is another one of the newer animes, I would say. It came out within the past couple of years, and I watched the first season because Kat got me interested in it.
I got a lot of people interested in it.
Because you showed the first episode.
I apologize, everyone.
In our failed attempt at a book club. and I saw that and I was like, huh. You know what, this is actually really interesting. And so I watched it. And the thing is, at the time they only had one season. And the show is only 2 seasons long. That's how long they made it. But at the time there was only one season, and they were currently making the second season, and so I'm just oh my goodness, what did I get myself into? So I can't binge watch this until it's all made and it's been dubbed. And so it's just this long process of waiting of just trying to finish it. And yeah, I'm glad I finally finished it because that took a while. But yeah, it's a really, for the most part, a very lighthearted show. There's a lot of mature themes, like inappropriate innuendos that happen.
Yeah.
Number 2.
Hold on.
Are we ready?
There's still something else I gotta say about this. And so yeah, like earlier when Kat was talking about how, they explain more about each character. So what I noticed is that each individual character at some point in the show has an episode focused on them, which I thought was really good because they actually gave you a lot about that character and their ideals, which is something I really liked how they did. Okay, number 2.
Okay, my number 2 is one that, it's more of a girly show. And it's called Agatsuki no Yona, or in English, Yona of the Dawn. And the first episode is really boring. You can probably skip it without really missing much of the story. But basically, it's a historical fantasy that centers around a girl named Yona. And the first episode is about her 16th birthday, and there's the guy that she really likes that's coming, and then he doesn't know that she likes him, and it's all this drama stuff. And can I add a spoiler for the second episode, or end
Sure.
the first?
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert! But then, I can't remember, end of second, beginning of first, or whatever, the guy that she's in love with kills her dad, and she watches that. Like, she sees him kill her dad. And then the guy she loves starts to come after her because she was a witness to that. So she ends up running away with one of her childhood friends. And then they're trying to survive, and the anime is very much character-centered and going through her, changing from a princess who was really spoiled and stuff to a girl who was surviving on her own. And I just really like that.
I can't say anything on it. This is the first
Yeah.
time ever hearing about it, but it sounds cool.
Okay.
And then later on, it introduces more fantasy elements and. And they should make a second season, but the author said no. Because the author wants to focus more on the manga.
Okay. So that was a short segment.
Yeah.
Okay, Matthew.
So, my number 2 show is Baccano, and it's kind of gained a bit of a cult following over the years, even though it started out very unpopular. And what it is it's basically, if you've seen the movie Pulp Fiction, it's kind of like that, except in the 1930s, and there are supernatural elements, and it's following about 20 different characters and different time periods, and it's jumping all over the place, and it's extremely crazy and over the top and really funny, and there's a lot of enjoyable dialogue scenes, a lot of enjoyable action scenes. There are some very hilarious characters, and it's definitely worth checking out. And yeah, it's very interesting. I haven't quite seen an anime quite like it. It's probably the most similar to anything you'll see in more traditional Western media, except there is a bit of the Japanese flair for the supernatural and strange.
Yeah, it's one I've heard about a lot, and most of it is talked highly of. But yeah, you're right. I heard a little bit about it just a few years ago, and then more recently it's been something I've been hearing more and more about.
Yeah.
It's not a story for everyone, though. I tried watching it and couldn't really get past the first episode.
Yeah, the first episode is actually the last episode chronologically. unless you count
Huh.
the 2 extra episodes, which, yeah, they
Interesting.
kind of do count.
All right.
Oh, is it on to me?
Yep.
Okay.
So my second favorite is one that I found a couple of years back. But it's called Kokoro Connect. Kokoro meaning heart in Japanese, or a place on a Bionicle map if you're into that too. But Kokoro would be
Oh,
ice
okay.
region, and yeah. So Kokoro Connect is an anime about basically this group of friends, and the group of friends is pretty normal. I believe there's 3 girls, 2 guys, I want to say, and they have different personalities, but it's a pretty basic high school situation. Japanese high school, of course. I believe they're in a club together. But the real story happens when like weird things start happening to them. The first one, this is a slight spoiler, but they switch bodies, and it happens kind of randomly. But it's a really interesting take on high school and like the relationships that you make there. And it gives a really deep sense to who you are, and even if you think you know somebody, like something about somebody, you might not still. And to really like, it gives an encouragement to try to understand and be there for your friends as best as possible. So I just really love the character building in it. It's something that I would highly recommend to somebody who's just recently gotten into anime and they just want something pretty lighthearted. There's a couple dark twists to it, but it's not anything crazy.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
and it's a pretty clean anime too, by the way. So if that's any concern for anybody watching, this is a pretty clean one.
All right.
Probably like one of the only clean ones I've mentioned.
All right. So, my number 2 is Code Geass. Yeah, I very much enjoyed the show. It's interesting how the world is kind of built. It's, I don't know, is it like a what if,
It's an alternate.
Yeah, alternate timeline type of show. I believe
Yeah.
the idea might be like the U.S. sort of, instead of, sort of stopping their empire growth, they actually sort of exploded as an empire and actually tried to take over the world. So I believe the alternate history starts at the end of World War II or something.
Yeah, I
and sort
think
of
that's right.
continues from there.
Weren't there like 99 or 97 or something emperors before Charles or something?
I don't know.
I don't
So
know.
I think he's like the 98th emperor. or
But
something.
it takes place in 2017.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, I was rewatching it and all the comments were like, hey, this is the year that it's happening.
Wow. It's just like Back to the Future. How that was 2 years ago, and so it's now like past history. It's no longer like relevant. Like, oh my gosh, woo! It's this year.
And I would also like to point out that all of us doing the podcast are older than Lelouch.
Oh, that's a weird thing to think about.
Wait, how old is he? 15?
He's a sophomore in 2017.
Oh,
Wow.
No, but school years in Japan are they
Okay,
going by the
but
Japan school years?
I
or
believe
the-
he's still like 16.
So I might be his age.
Okay. So. Okay, so back to this anime. Well.
Back to the point.
So back to what I wanted to say about this. Yeah, it was a very enjoyable anime. So it's this and the number 1 anime on this list. They both had a feeling like it's a chess match between like the protagonist and the antagonist, and they both kind of show their moves And so the idea is like, how do we counteract this? And so here it's a bit more acknowledge how it's written like that, because chess, I think the protagonist of the story actually does his battle plans as a chess game, and so which I thought is actually really cool how he can do a lot of this. But something I really like is different battle strategies that are shown here. They're all really cool, and I think like they could probably be really effective if we had those strategies in our life today. Especially if we had those mecha suits they have. And so which are really cool. One thing I will say, there's actually two things to say. One thing that I actually learned from this is that I never knew that you could accidentally commit mass genocide. Which is actually really sad when it happened, but it's also pretty interesting that it was completely accidental, which, yeah, I thought that was funny. But another thing about this thing that I will say is that there is a lot of fan service in this show. From what I can tell, there are 2 seasons.
Yes, there's a third one coming out.
Which is not a good idea.
No one's excited for it.
Yeah. Anyways, but there is a lot of fan service, especially in the 2nd season, involving some of the female characters of the show. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, this show would actually be on my list, except I knew that everyone else was going to talk about it.
Aww.
And it's like really interesting because it's so complex in its view of the world. It's very much like a study of warfare, a study of technology, a study of politics, and the occasional episode where everyone chases a cat around a school. And it doesn't let the more Japanese aspects get in the way of its arguments, and it's very philosophical. And the ending is actually probably my favorite ending of any anime, and one of my favorite endings of all time. Just in the way it like perfectly wraps up, and there's actually religious allegories, and it's like really cool. And to add another season, I think, especially if they add certain characters into that other season, cheapens the whole effect of the ending of the first 2 seasons. So I'm kind of disappointed that they're trying to make another season, because it ruins the point of the entire show.
Yeah, and like the ideals of the main character, like that was the season 2 finale. That was his entire goal, to get to that point, and then just to go on after that is just, so what happens next? Like his ideal's already done, so what are we doing now? And this should lead to number 1, because it's your number 1.
The same one. Code Geass. And yeah, I really liked just like the characters, the story, and all that's going on, because I also like how Lelouch, the main character, isn't like an unfeeling like person, where normally in stories like this, like Death Note, it's like kind of like Light has no feelings anymore, but Lelouch keeps his feelings and like still cries if something happens, and well, maybe doesn't cry, but like it's still sad when stuff happens, and it's really like still loves people, whereas you normally don't see that. And then that also brings a bunch of plot points, and it's very interestingly written.
Yeah.
Everything's connected. There are way too many characters to remember.
No, there aren't. Yes, there are.
Yeah, you're like scrolling through the wiki pages, and you'll like, wait, who's this character? And they'll be in like 3 episodes, but there's like this whole backstory, and this is what they contributed.
There is
to the
a
show.
lot. There is a lot of that. Yeah.
There's a lot of pawns, but it adds sort of that reality to. Even though it's like a sci-fi, over-the-top Japanese anime, it adds
supernatural.
It adds a reality to war of like, there are characters dying all over the place, and no one's safe. And this is a few years before even Game of Thrones tried to do that, and it adds that like aspect of reality of this is what war looks like. It's ugly and it doesn't always end well, and there's a toll that it has on the humans involved. And yeah, but it also questions like why does war exist, and then it sort of gives an answer in the end, which is really interesting.
So, unpopular opinion here. I didn't like Code Geass. I got through about, I want to say 11 episodes, and then I stopped.
Wow, you got pretty far.
To some degree, I regret not watching the full thing, because I'm sure it got better, and from what I hear about the ending with you guys, that might be worth it. But I don't know. I guess for me, it progressed too slowly. And I don't know. I just felt like a lot of the characters were too mopey all the time. But, I mean, it has been quite a while since I've seen it. And part of me not liking it, I think, contributes to... I was watching another anime at the time. I think it's called, like, Magi's... Something like that. Some Magi's Labyrinth? I don't really know. Anyways, I watched through that, and it got really boring really fast. So, it might have just bled through into my mind that I was like, oh, Code Geass is boring too. But that's kind of my reasoning for not enjoying it. It's well written, and it's well the animation was really good. I remembered liking that. The concept was good. I don't know. It wasn't for me, I suppose.
And there's still Pizza Hut.
Oh yes.
Well, yeah.
Pizza Hut is absolutely like
It's
I remember
everywhere.
I remembered Pizza Hut, and I'm like, it can't be everywhere in the show. No, it is everywhere.
You can tell who sponsored the show.
They're driving down the highway, and there are Pizza Hut signs everywhere. One of the main characters loves Pizza Hut so much they got like limited edition dolls from ordering enough Pizza Hut.
It's like that one it's that one movie with Sylvester Stallone where it's like in the future, and basically all the food chains wiped each other out and combined to make a full Taco Bell. Like Taco Bell's the only restaurant in the future. It's
And the
great.
thing that's even funnier is that it was because there was a franchise war
Yeah.
that made all this. Anyway, so Matthew, number 1.
Okay, so for my number 1, I'm going with another movie. And in general, I prefer anime movies to TV shows. I feel like there's a bit more artistic purpose behind it, and they're a bit more subtle in their metaphors. But my number 1 is Princess Mononoke. And yeah, I mean, this is an epic movie where most animated movies are around 90 minutes long. This is like 130 minutes long. So that's 2 hours and 10 minutes. And it fills that runtime with like this debate. And it isn't, unlike a lot of more environmentalist movies like Avatar, the blue alien one, not the Shyamalan one. That one is like nature good, people bad. But
Yeah.
what Princess Mononoke does is it takes a bunch of different perspectives and different extremes, and then like the middle ground people, and it just sort of pits them against each other. And like, is it possible to be both pro-environment and pro-humanity? And I mean, it's like so complex. One of the main villains of the movie, she's trying to chop down the forest, but at the same time, she's trying to provide jobs for prostitutes and lepers who have been sort of cast out of society. So you have to kind of wrap your brain around, well, is she really the bad guy, or is she a good guy, and how can you reconcile the two? How can you make everyone happy? And yeah, it's so complex, and even the story itself is really good. There's a lot of like fantasy elements that sort of drive it forward, and yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It's a beautiful piece. My only complaint with it was at the time of watching, I was really tired. So I didn't pick up on a lot of the themes. And so like with most movies and stuff, there's a definite good and bad guy, and in this, it was you can't really say one side was really the bad guy. In this, also it is very long, so if you do watch it, beware that it's long.
And more than being long, it feels long.
Yeah.
Which is one of the interesting things about Miyazaki films is they tend to feel longer than their runtime, which for some movies it's pretty good. For some of them, you're trying to figure out when it's over. For me personally, with Princess Mononoke, I was enjoying it so much the whole film that when it just kept going, I was so excited because I knew there was more interesting stuff to happen. But with some of his movies, I have sort of gotten bored and not stopped watching, but almost stopped watching, and then something will happen and bring me back in.
For me, I just get bored with all his movies, including Princess Mononoke. Although I did watch it all the way through. I just didn't really like it.
Yeah.
I have heard I have heard some complaints that the ending is too cheesy and unrealistic, but I don't know. It's very interesting, very complex. You can pick it apart, and I guess in the end it's kind of ambiguous. Can everything work out? What do you think? It's more meant to start a conversation than to say anything definite.
Yeah, I think the ending was actually less cheesy than it could be. I think they did a good job with the ending. I think that they did the best that they could with the ending, frankly.
Yeah. And then, the main character is sort of taking the place of the audience. He's observing all of these things, and he's offering sort of the middle ground. And then you have, like, the lady who is trying to create career opportunities, but also trying to burn down the forest. Then you have, like, the evil guy who's just, like, trying to destroy nature. And then on the other side, you have the Princess Mononoke, who's trying to reconcile her humanity with her, like, more nature-focused upbringing. And then on the very extreme there, you have the boars who are just sort of blindly charging against humanity. So it, like, brings all of these different perspectives together, has them battle it out, and then sort of, like, looks at the audience to decide what they think.
Yeah.
Okay. Top.
All right. So for me, and this has been touched on a little bit before, but my favorite anime, or perhaps not my favorite anime, but I think the anime that is best done is Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Again, I haven't seen the original, but from what I understand, this follows the manga a little bit better. Honestly, like, this was way back when I was watching. This is one of the first animes that I think I watched. I think this was the third anime that I had seen. But before that, it had just been, I think it was, maybe fourth? I don't know. I had watched Bakugan, Pokemon, and Fairy Tail. And so, while Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is a long anime at about, I think, 53 episodes, it stops, unlike Pokemon, which has been going on for like 15 seasons, Fairy Tail, which is, I think, still ongoing, and Bakugan, which has like 4 seasons total. But Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is just really well done. It's concise, but it tells a full story. It never feels like it's straying too much from the story, even to tell some of the backstory. And the characterization is good. It's not too dark, but it's not too light either, and it gives a good philosophical argument for what is life and how valuable is it, and should we really be messing with it. And it ends, and the way it ends is really good. It has a very, very good climax, and it leaves you off with a philosophical question. But I think
So,
it's to me it's the pinnacle of an anime until I find one that's better.
okay. So, how many seasons are there?
For Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood,
Yeah.
I watched it just straight through, so I'm not sure if it's divided up into seasons. From my understanding, it's just one season that's 50 episodes.
Mm.
But I'm not entirely sure on that.
Okay, so I watched this thing on Netflix, and they had what they had, like 4 seasons of it. And as I watched them, but when I got to the finale of the 4th season, it ended in a cliffhanger and not really solving anything. It ended in a way as like, okay, so everyone here is in jeopardy. End of season. And the thing is they don't have any of the future. They don't have the other episodes on there, which I've heard has been a big problem with Netflix and this series, is that they keep taking off, like 2 seasons and then putting it back on. And so it's just this whole complication is that I can't really finish it because it's not there. And at that time, I didn't have any other means to finish it from other websites. And right now, I'm just kind of like, I don't really want to take the effort to look it up.
Okay, so
because
sorry,
so
just
what?
to interject. There are 64 episodes, and it is one continuous season, all the way through.
Yeah, Netflix kind of changes that up.
Yeah.
Are you sure that's Brotherhood?
Mm-hmm. According to Crunchyroll. Yeah, so, I don't know. I really enjoyed it, and it being one of the first ones I saw has a good nostalgia factor to it as well. So, what's yours?
Mine? Okay, so mine is another one that was talked about earlier is Death Note. And we attempted to do this podcast a while ago, but it was only me and Matthew. And when we finished, I forgot to save the audio, which which was fine because it was only a 20-minute podcast and it wasn't that long. But when we did that, Death Note was number 3 on the list. And what changed is that I actually rewatched this one, which made a big difference. Because, when you watch things and then rewatch it again much, much later, your output and, views of how you see things do change sometimes. And so things maybe have a different experience than when you watch it the first time. And so, yeah, I had a different mindset going into this. Is like, first time going into it is like, oh, it's like anime, first time. I don't know about this. There's a lot of weird things on anime internet. I don't know what goes on here. So that was partially my hesitation to watching this. But now that, I've seen a bunch of others, going into this is like, okay, I've seen this before. I've seen other animes. I know what goes on. And so I had a much more enjoyable experience because, it's the story is like you get to see the outcome, you get to see how things are progressing, you get to see the little tidbits to what the end goal is, and how things are foreshadowed within the story that you don't really catch the first time, and little stuff like that was really enjoyable when watching it, and Matthew was saying how there's the whole thing, complications with the second half of the season, which I'm going to say this to you right now, that if you watch it, it is extremely obvious when the second half of the season kicks in, because there's a tonal shift, and then the time frame is completely different, and yeah, you can tell when that is. And I do prefer the first one because you're getting to know all these characters and like things are built up, and the second half. I can honestly see why people don't really like it that much, because characters, that's one reason. But for me, that didn't really bother me as much. Like, while there was a bit of sadness, I really did like one of the characters that was in the second half, the character Nier, who with the white hair. And one of the biggest reasons why I liked that character is because that was probably the first time I've ever recognized a voice actress in a role. And it's like also really special because I actually met that voice actress in person, and so it's just really cool catching their voice in the show. So yeah.
What I'll say about Death Note, to add to what I've said before, is it's kind of like the main complaint with the Marvel Netflix shows, where it's just so long that halfway through they run out of stuff to do, so they completely change the show, and it's almost like a different show. And
yeah,
I mean, based on what had come before, I did not like the second half, and looking back on it, even the first half, it isn't weak, but looking back on it, I enjoy it a lot less than I did when I was initially watching it, having seen more anime now than then. And yeah, I mean, it explored some interesting topics, but over time it has sort of fallen out of my list of favorite anime.
I don't know how off topic this is, but there's a different series written by the same author called Bakuman, and it's about these kids who are writing manga, and it kind of explores these kids writing a series kind of like Death Note, where it's a psychological thriller between two characters. And then suddenly they are told this will get an anime, and it's like halfway through the arc or whatever. And then when they finish the arc, it's like the people making the anime want them to continue, because then they get more money and all that stuff, and the manga company wants them to continue, and it's like them trying to fight for the story needs to end now, and also being like, can we make this go on longer? And I thought that was like interesting how the authors are saying it kind of seems like that was kind of their thought process as they were writing Death Note.
Yeah, I will say two things. One, I've not seen them, but apparently the live-action Japanese Death Note movies fix some of the problems that I've had with the original, specifically the point where the show shifts. They changed that. And then I'm also kind of looking forward to the Netflix movie that's coming out soon. I don't know, is that sacrilege?
Well, I mean, I would say, like, I'm looking forward to it too, just as I was looking forward to Ghost in the Shell, but I haven't seen either of them. I mostly want to evaluate both from a movie viewing standpoint, and then go back and watch the original show just to get that effect.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm with you there.
I mean, I'm kind of hoping that they can kind of bring the show back up, or at least bring the story back into good graces with me, because it is a good story. I just think the way the anime handled it was not very well.
Oh, so one thing I have to say is that I find it funny how, Walmart actually realizes that anime is starting to, it has a big following, and so they now are starting to build sections with anime on it, and so it's like, some of the stuff on this is like, I found at Walmart, it's like, oh, this is, yeah.
It's also true about, like, libraries nowadays more often than not have comic books and manga sections, which is really cool.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting because comic books are going down in readership, and I believe manga is going up. So it's kind of And now they've started making the
It's like a
movies
shift.
based on
Well,
anime and manga. So
comic books, I know in the DC side, it makes sense why the viewership for them has gone down is because there was just this big issue with the New 52 where everything was just rebooted that had been going on for a long while.
Well,
and that's one of the things where manga has
in which I hope some things are being fixed with the Rebirth series, and I just wonder how that is going to work out.
Well, that's one of the places where manga has the upper hand. It's that everything isn't interconnected, so it's a little bit easier to separate them, and you don't have to reboot the entire universe 2 times in like the space of 3 years.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. There are so many different manga and anime stories out there, whereas when it comes to comic books, I mean, it's at this point it's basically either Marvel or DC, and for longtime comic book fans, a lot of times they're just seeing their favorite stories get rebooted and rebooted and rebooted. Whereas if you're looking to make movies out of manga, you've got like an infinite pool of manga that you can make into live action movies.
It's ever growing too.
Yeah. And all the stories, like, this is the thing about Eastern comics and Eastern animation, is that all the stories, while they may have similar elements, are pretty unique. And most animes or manga that you find, you can't pick up 2 and say, hey, these are basically the same thing. Unlike a lot of comic book heroes. Well, I guess that's...
I will say that gets into the problem that I have, especially with anime shows, and that's that with a lot of them, you can't explain them in one sentence, and I believe the term high concept, I may be using it wrong, so I'm looking it up right now, but from what I understand, that is used to describe something that is easy to explain, yet at the same time very original and complex. And most anime do not fall into that category. Okay, yeah, so here the definition of high concept: striking an easily communicable idea. So the example that I like to use is The Martian. A guy gets stranded on Mars and has to try to get back. Whereas if you compare that to an anime like, say, Dead Man Wonderland, a teenage boy is falsely accused of murdering his classmates, so he has to go to an amusement park where he fights to the death with different people, but he can use his blood as a weapon. And it is original, but it's just so many concepts that it feels like you're shoving 3 different separate shows into one. And so I feel like that's what will have to be addressed going down the road if they want to sort of expand manga further, is trying to not take away the originality, but at the same time making it a little more simple in concept.
In my opinion, I would almost disagree with that, in that I don't know, there's a good YouTube channel, and the title of the YouTube channel is an accurate summary of my opinion, but or not the YouTube channel, but the show that he does. He does a show called Everything is a Remix, and he basically touches on topics on how everything is either a copy, a combination, or a copy and morph from something else. And he brought up topics like Star Wars The Force Awakens compared to A New Hope. I think I like the idea of combinations of old ideas, bringing them together, because that can make for some interesting stories. But that being said, I think I agree that too many of those combinations can make it difficult. And that's why we use movie genres to define movies, is so that we can have a simple way of defining, oh, this is what this is. Whereas Dead Man Wonderland, you could argue, is a psychological thriller, but not really. But it's sci-fi, but also not really. But it just doesn't really fit into a genre. I have some things to say about Dead Man Wonderland, but
Well, yeah.
yeah.
I tried watching that show, and after 2 episodes, I'm like, I just cannot stand this main character's voice. So I switched
Right?
to Japanese, and I'm like, that's not any better.
Exactly. And the voice actor for him is not a bad voice actor, but the role just I agree
Yeah.
completely though.
It's that, but I mean, in general, like, you try to explain an anime to another person, and you end up spending like 5 minutes trying to explain the basic concept.
And then it sounds really
Yeah.
weird, and then they don't want to even try
Right.
listening to it.
And
or
if you try
watching it or
to
whatever.
sum it up any further, then you end up with just like Soul Eater, people turn into weapons. And you're like, well, that isn't really an accurate representation.
Right.
So, yeah, I feel like a lot of anime get it right, where it's like, okay, let's combine a few different elements
Mhm.
and sort of create something new. Like Code Geass does that, where it's like,
Mhm.
it's both like a political thriller and a war and mech, but it focuses more on the war than on the politics or on the mechs.
Mhm.
Whereas other shows have the problem where they're trying to focus on everything and,
Right.
oh, look at how complex we are. No, you're just convoluted and
Yeah.
trying too hard.
Well, and like, just bringing back to the point of simplicity, like, you can argue all day long about Death Note being in this genre or that genre, but the main concept is pretty simple. There's a book that if you write someone's name in, it kills them. And from there, the watcher can think, oh, well, what would I do if I had this book? And then they can watch the characters in this show and their reactions towards this concept. So yeah, that's one that does that well.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Back on topic.
that's went down a rabbit hole.
So,
I think we should probably get into honorable mentions.
Of which I have none.
Okay.
Okay,
Either
then.
it's none or 20, so I figured I'd go with none.
So the first honorable mention that I have is Durarara, which is by the same creator as Baccano, and I had a really hard time putting this off my list because it's crazy. There's stuff going on all the time. It's all over the place. It's hilarious, and yet it still grounds itself around these core concepts that sort of carry out throughout the whole show. And yeah. Then the next honorable mention I have is The Wind Rises, from Hayao Miyazaki. And this one sort of takes away, it isn't your typical anime where it's like supernatural sci-fi. Instead, it's a fictionalized biography of a real-life person. And it adds those surreal elements, but it's very much grounded in reality, and it's really beautiful. Then Akira, I couldn't not mention this since it's sort of the thing that kicked off the anime in the West, and it's not a bad film. I don't think it's the perfect film, but it deserves a lot of respect. And then finally, Garden of the Sinners, or Kara no Kyokai, and that one actually would have been on my list because I saw the first episode, and the first episode is incredible. It has one of the most beautiful fight scenes in any anime that I've seen. But then I was going to actually watch more of the episodes to get ready for this podcast. And when I watched the second episode, it completely ruined absolutely everything that I loved about the first episode. So I couldn't actually put it on my list. And I haven't seen past the second episode, so I can't comment on the show as a whole.
Toa?
Alright, so my honorable mentions. I want to start with Avatar The Last Airbender because it's not an anime, but I want the clarification because there are some people that hold it in regards to being an anime, in that it was technically animated in South Korea. So there's the argument that way. But if it was considered an anime, it would be on the top of my list, hands down. As for others, I have to give shout outs to Bakugan for being my first anime, and I still enjoy it. It's just a lot of nostalgia. Sword Art Online for exposing me to a lot of anime that I watched today, even though going back and watching it, it's okay at best. It has, the first arc is a good concept that does all right with it, and then it kind of goes downhill after that first arc.
I think the second half of the first arc is where it starts going downhill.
Yeah, a little bit. But that being said, if you ever have time to watch the SAO Abridged series, it is probably my favorite thing in the world. It's really good. Another thing, well, on my honorable mentions was Death Parade, because that was pretty close, but we went over that. An anime called Guilty Crown was one that I watched a while ago. And it's got an interesting story. The ending is really bad, just because they tried to explain like how some of the characters were all connected at the very end, and there was like this whole like incestuous story arc, and it was, if you watch through it, just don't take anything that the people say as canon for like the last episode. And then, but it has the main concept is that the hero gets basically these superpowers where he can use somebody's soul as a weapon. And so each weapon is different and cool and unique. Just an interesting idea. And then the last one that I have on my list is one called Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon?
Why did you watch that?
I watched it too. It's actually pretty good.
It is. So it really, basically it's set in a world that acts a lot like a video game. But it's got a lot of mythology in it, a lot of fun humor to it. It definitely sounds worse by the title than it actually is. But it was a fun anime. Oh, also, I'll mention Attack on Titan too, because I enjoyed it. But yeah, we talked a little bit beforehand. I think it is too convoluted, but it's a cool idea. Really good theme songs.
You know, I attempted to watch it, but they took the English dub off of Netflix, so I'm not gonna.
I mean,
and for me, the first battle was going on for too long and nothing was happening, and so I got bored and I stopped watching.
It's pretty action based.
yeah.
The problem for me
psychological.
is that the action doesn't drive the story forward. So that was my main complaint, and I haven't gotten very far in it,
Right.
so
I think
can't really comment too much.
as the story goes on, the action does drive the plot forward more and more. The first few episodes are definitely slow. I would agree with that. I don't know. It definitely does. I think film theorists did a good job of comparing it to what Nazism could accomplish if done in the right situation. Just because there's a lot of Nazi ideology wrapped up into Attack on Titan, and there's this whole like mystery aspect of, wow, what would I do in this scenario, and kind of combating hopelessness, which another reason why I love the soundtrack, because it's so like awe-inspiring almost, and really raises morale in you. So while you're watching, you're like, yeah, you guys can do it, and then I mean they all get like slaughtered in the end, but you're like, oh well, you tried. It was honorable, I guess.
One thing I will admit that is really enjoyable is the opening theme.
Yeah.
It's a very catchy tune.
And my favorite Attack on Titan thing, though, is the Phineas and Ferb episode about zombies. I'm forgetting the title now. It's like
Shaun of the Dead.
No, it's like a 40-minute long episode of Phineas and Ferb where the zombies come to life, and like the end, they like zoom out of the city and they reveal that it's all inside of a wall, and they've adapted the first line of Attack on Titan and they have Phineas say it, and that's just a great episode for pop culture references in general,
right.
Because it's like they have the two main characters from Shaun of the Dead, the actual two main characters, and I believe the actors from Shaun of the Dead are actually playing these two characters as like cameo roles.
Nice.
And so it was hilarious, and I had a lot of fun with that. Even though I didn't quite enjoy Attack on Titan, it still gave me
Dawn of the Pharmacist?
Yeah, Dawn of the Pharmacist. Everyone is turning into pharmacists.
Oh, another thing that I think really improved my experience for Attack on Titan is I played
Oh, yes.
I played the fan game of it when the fan game was coming out. And in that game, there's like a decent amount of challenge to killing these titans, in that you can't just like slash away. You have to slit the nape of their neck. And there's a lot of challenge in that. And I played that with friends, with Corel, and it was just something that like
you
bonded
two
with people.
were obsessed with that game when
Yeah.
it was out.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with it.
I remember just sitting quietly, just watching you play. Like,
Yeah, because we figured out that if we loaded the web page before we went to school, we didn't actually need Wi-Fi to play it. So we would play it in like class or during lunch. Yeah.
Such great students.
Yeah, you know.
All right. So, my honorable mention is Madoka Magica, which.
Isn't that the dark one that looks really cute and stuff?
Well, here's the thing: when you just look at it from the outside, what it's saying is like, oh, this is a show about magical girls, and that's what you would expect. But watching it's like, well, yeah, there are magical girls. You don't really get to see that in action, but there are magical girls. But it's more like the idea. Basically, what happens is that the main character is given the offer of becoming a magical girl, and so the overall show was like, what should she do? Because one, if she's a magical girl, she can like fight off against witches and evil, and like be magical. But on the other side is like you would essentially have to give up your soul to do this, and so there's just a lot more complications about what would happen, and then within this like either the first or second episodes, like her new best friend dies, and so it's just like what? It's just a shocking moment for her, and so it's like the rest of the show is her mourning and still trying to decide whether or not she should do this, while her other friends, they turn into magical girls, and there's just a conflict between each other. It's like who is better, because you can't just do this just for the benefits of others. You gotta do this for yourself, because if you don't, you will die, because there's just a whole lot of complications that come into this. And I found this quite fascinating, that for a show that from the outside is like, oh, this is like lighthearted, girls in in cute little dresses, fighting with trippy things, it's like that's what you would think would happen, but it's just a lot of philosophical and moral conflicts that go into this. Is like, what do you do for something like this? And then it ends like most anime does, with an unsatisfying ending. And then the movie comes out, and it's again even more unsatisfying than the ending of the show. what is with anime and unsatisfactory endings?
That is actually one of the big things with anime is they have the tendency to not end well
Or not end.
or not. Yeah, and one of the things that I've heard is that unlike a lot of Western TV shows, anime tends to be an advertisement for the manga.
Right.
So if your show doesn't end, oh, don't worry, there's a manga there that they want you to buy. And, well, that's not a bad idea. I think it cheapens anime to just being go watch the manga instead of being its own entity.
Right. And so there's one show that I probably should have written down for my honorable mentions or even top 5, but No Game, No Life. They only released one season of it, but it was all a advertisement for the manga, and they said they're not going to release it anymore.
Actually, the light novel.
Oh, light novel, sorry. But really good anime, but sucks that it ended the way it did.
So, one other thing which I wanted to really exclude from my honorable mention because of reasons, but I decided it would only take like sound really short unless Matthew gets into a whole discussion upon this.
He might.
And I think you know what I'm talking about, right? Probably.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, so my secondary honorable mention, while it certainly was not bad, I do have my issues with it, and it's the Count of Monte Cristo. And,
okay.
And, you know, like, I've seen so many versions of the Count of Monte Cristo, and just adding another version is like, and because I prefer the other versions, you know, I prefer the other way they told the story. Here, they seem to have focused mostly on the filler sections of the book, and while the other stuff they focused on the main plot points, which I thought was, you know, fun to learn all of the side stuff that they did in the book. But also, another thing I did not really like was the animation style from this, and more their clothing is I don't know how to explain it. It's like
the patterns on the clothes do not move with the clothes, and it's hard to explain without seeing it. But
yeah,
I really like that show.
No.
Mainly, I guess the main reason is first off, it's just the animation is so different and it catches your attention, and I really like that part, even though a lot of people don't like it. And then the second reason is that it takes like a classic story, but then instead of being that an adaptation of that story, it like takes a sci-fi twist, and it's very surreal.
Takes place in space.
Yeah, I personally really enjoyed it, but I do understand the criticisms that are held against it.
And, you know, that's another reason why I did not really like it, was because that it was sci-fi. It wasn't like the whole modern world, which I would have... I really do want there to be, like, a version that's very close to the book and actually has all of the filler stuff, like the BBC Pride and Prejudice, how they take the time to actually go through all of it instead of just shoving it and just taking stuff out just to fit their time frame, which probably it could have been done in an anime, but here they excluded the first 30 chapters and they kind of briefly went over it in one episode, like near the finale when they finally revealed who the Count of Monte Cristo was, which was artistically a nice thing to do, but I think it was really distracting for me because I've seen 4 versions right before watching it, and that did not really help. So, yeah.
It all kind of reminds me of, I tried to watch an anime a while ago called Romeo X Juliet. which
Same studio, by the way.
that doesn't surprise me. So it takes place in a more, I guess, fantasy looking place where I guess I don't really know. It's been a long time since I've seen it, and honestly, I stopped halfway through it because it wasn't super well done. But it was an interesting take on Shakespeare, and having flying horses and stuff is cool too. So I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all we have. Is there any other things we want to say?
Oh man, none of you guys brought up like High School DxD or Glitter Force. Man,
Haven't seen it.
Oh,
I wouldn't recommend either. But
honestly, there's just way too much
Yeah.
out there to honestly just compile it up to a 5-part segment.
mhm.
That would take a while. Even though there's 4 people here, and 2 of us did have the exact same thing.
Almost.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about Digimon. I just realized that now. Not on my
Yeah.
top 5, but it's honorable mention for sure.
Okay.
Love me some
Yeah, I've been
Digimon.
realizing some of the ones that I've forgotten, but
Yeah.
Yeah. We've already just
yeah.
gone far enough into this. Anyway.
If you haven't seen anime,
There's a
is-
lot of good stuff
yeah.
and a lot more terrible stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can sift through, then you'll find there
It-
are
it-
definitely gems in there,
Yeah.
and it isn't too hard to find those gems. So go check it out. Anime isn't a genre; it's a style.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I would agree.
And so if you don't like one show, that doesn't mean that you'll hate everything
Mhm.
else.
It also will change the way you view other things.
So I think lastly, one thing we should do before we go is if you had to recommend one anime for someone to watch to get into anime, what would you recommend?
Well, I've already stated earlier that
Yeah, you
Death
said
Note,
Death Note. Yeah.
So
Oh, great.
I would honestly, Death Note is usually that's the one that I hear the most of. In fact, most of my friends who are fans of anime started with Death Note, but I guess more to introduce them to the feel of anime in general, I would actually suggest Code Geass, because that has a lot of the elements that you'll see in other anime. It has the clubs and the student council and all of that, but it also shows like the complexity that anime can achieve. So that's maybe not as a first one, but as one, if someone is thinking of getting more seriously into anime, that's one that I would recommend.
I think I myself would say Sword Art Online, even though it's not necessarily the greatest. The first arc of it, at least, gives you a good idea of, hey, anime tend to explore some pretty interesting ideas. And if they just get through the first arc, that's probably all they really need to watch, and then they can move on to other anime. And then I would directly after that show them the abridged series, but
That's one of the best traditions of anime, the abridged series. Those are
true.
hilarious, and if you find a good one, and then of course they cancel the good ones after like 4 episodes. So
True.
and they get a cease and desist from the companies. So
and then you have to look for it on which channel it was re-uploaded on, and
it's a complicated process. So, Kat, do you have one?
Well, I mean, it really depends on the person for which show to give them, because, I mean, there's just such a range of anime, and
oh, here's another interesting one that could in the future replace Death Note as sort of the introductory anime, and this would probably have been on my list if I had even thought of it. Terror in Resonance is it's not that popular, but it's about 2 terrorists who sort of blow up buildings, but they're buildings where no one's in them, and they do it as like a social statement, and it feels very much like a lighter version of Death Note. And so if Death Note is too dark for
It's still
whoever
pretty
you're,
dark.
it's still dark, but it just overall has a lighter tone. It deals less with death, and Yeah, that would be another one that I would use to get people into anime.
I'd probably actually show them a comedy.
Hmm.
To get
Or on
them
High
in.
School Host Club.
No. Ones that actually made me laugh. Like, there's, I think pretty recent Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-kun. I don't know what it is.
How many pages do you have of anime names?
Too many. But basically, it's a romantic comedy. It doesn't have a good ending, though, since it's more read the manga kind of ending, and the manga is still continuing. But it made me laugh practically every episode. And that would be one that I would, like, show, just to show, like, yeah. Really lighthearted.
Okay, are we done then?
Are we done?
I don't have anything else to say.
Oh, okay. Alright, I believe that's all we have for today, anyway. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.